Welcome to A Matter of Music. I'm Wisner-Johnson.
And I'm Beth Wisner-Jahnsen.
And we are here to provide a unique space for musicians to gather tools, ideas, and education to help master this crazy business of music. Welcome today. We're going to be talking about an overview of how royalties began, copyright, all of these things. Beth loves this kind of stuff. She's been studying it.
I've been in Google nightmare and joy. So, yeah.
And I will tell you this, before she even studied it, she already knew most of it, but she's probably just getting all the dates and things like that in place. But I want to say that this is very important because as with many subjects and things that we do in the world, it's good to know the history of why things are as they are. Because if you know the history, then you can understand a bit more why things are happening the way they are. So royalties, copyright, digital, the technology that we have that's starting now with all of the music, all of the platforms coming up, it's a crazy world. That's why I say it is. Right now, we're kind of in the wild, wild west. We've said that a few times. So Beth's going to give you an overview of kind of the history of this. It's going to be fun. I'm excited that you're here today because you're gonna get
more excited than I am.
Get some good information. So.
Okay, first I'm going to tell you though, we do have a class coming up. Please go check out our website, amatterofmusic.com, and go to the classes page to see the class that's coming up. We have some information there on the syllabus and how much it costs. It's not as expensive as a lot of other classes, and you get 2 teachers, not 1, but 2. So there you go. We'll go into depth, much more into depth in our classes because we'll have extra time, and we'll also be able to answer your questions. So.
And our classes will be small, and it almost like we're just guiding you through some things. And so we're doing that on purpose so that, and I will be listening to some of your music if you want some feedback. I've worked in the music supervision world for quite a while, and I'm excited to do that and help you figure out how to get syncs and different things like that. So we're excited to start those as well. So please check out amatterofmusic.com.
Okay, so
go to the classes page.
Sorry, Don. The history of where to get paid and why you get paid. Why do you get paid for when you do a song? Okay, so basically, copyright is not, it's not a thing that just was established when humans started walking around. It wasn't like, I created that painting on the wall and that's mine. That wasn't a concept. It kind of evolved as things began to evolve. When the printing press came along in, I believe it was the late 16th century, the Gutenberg Bible around 1650, something like that. Suddenly, instead of having to copy, music note for note by hand, people were able to print those things. And the father of modern music printing, his name is Ottaviano Petrucci. I'm assuming he's Italian. So he started printing some music, and I'm assuming selling it, because before I think they were just using, writing down music so that they could use it at different churches.
Was he printing his own music?
No, I think he was printing other people's music. So he probably invested in he was the father of, they call him the father of modern music printing. So he wasn't just printing his own, I'm sure. He was probably trying to make a living at it to pay for his printing press. So that was in the 16th century. Mozart, is in there. And if you think about Mozart, how did Mozart get paid? That's not something, if you've watched the movie Amadeus, he had patrons. The king was one. People would pay him to write something. Artists, that's what they did back then. Painters, musicians, they would have somebody commission a work from them, or they would have somebody keep them on staff, or have the Vatican ask you to paint a ceiling, things like that. So that's how artists got paid. So they had patrons. Around 1893, the sheet music had become one of the main things. There was also in there what do they call the rolls on pianos? Piano rolls?
Player piano rolls.
Player piano rolls. Yeah. Those came along, and those were, where they would have the little metal thing with the holes in it. And or the paper that would scroll through and it would play the piano with the holes in it, kind of the first synthesizer, digital synthesizer, really, if you think about it. It's pretty cool. But so those things could be sold. And I'm thinking a lot of people didn't get paid their royalties for those kinds of things. But in 1893, the sheet music for the song After the Ball, you know that song, Dawn? After the ball
No.
over, da 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 da. You don't know that song?
Oh, got it.
Song.
Yeah.
We still know it today. Okay, so that sold. Sorry about my singing. She's a singer. I'm not. That sold 1 million copies in 1 year, and over the next 10 years, it sold 10 million copies. That kind of blows my mind that sheet music would sell 10 million copies in 10 years. But that song was huge. That was a blockbuster song. You know, if there were charts, that would have been the #1 song for a long time. So what they would do is somebody would write a song. They would print it up. They would sell it. People would go play it at home. They would go, you know, little bands would play it at dances and different things. And that's how people who were writing music were making, because there wasn't anything else. There were player pianos. There wasn't anything else. So along comes phonographs. Records were in about the 1880s. You can go Google who actually invented the phonograph. As with the light bulb and a lot of other things, it's more than one person, really. But Edison gets the credit for that mostly. So the phonograph comes along, and then you have mechanicals along with the printing. So mechanicals, publishing, all these things start to come into play. Copyright law in America is starting to try to catch up, and about 1909, they pass a law regarding paying, you know, songwriters to make sure they get paid. Nobody does it. Everybody ignores it. Kind of sounds familiar, doesn't it? And in 1914, ASCAP is born, the Association of Songwriters, Composers, Artists, and Publishers. So ASCAP came along to try to enforce and collect those royalties. They, you know, so they've been around for 106 years. It's a little bit crazy when you think about it. So they were collecting on sheet music, on live performances, I guess, on records. And then radio was also born in the 1920s. So now there's another place for ASCAP to go collect. Think about that. Radio wasn't really a big thing until when ASCAP was born. So ASCAP was born to collect royalties on sheet music and live performances. Because radio really, you know, wasn't the thing. So so back then, so they started collecting writers and publishers for that as well. And then 1930s, sound is married to film. And, you know, I'm assuming before that, all the stuff that was played in, you know, in films that were silent films, I'm assuming that they collected royalties for those as well. But now film is married, and now you've got sync. There's a sync license. So every time there's a new technology, there's expanded copyright and publishing and royalties. Every time something new comes along, and when something new comes along, they don't go to songwriters and Congress and go, hey, how are we going to pay the songwriters for this? That never happens. It's always the dog chasing the tail. So, you know, some new technology comes along and that's what happens. Television comes along in the 1950s. And now here's another something to go collect on. And, you know, I'm sure a lot of those things at the very beginning were, you know, if they have a show, they paid somebody to write the music for it. But they were performing variety shows and performing people's music. Who has to figure out how those things get paid? Congress, ASCAP. You know, by this point, ASCAP is under Congress's control. It's called a consent decree. That's a whole other subject. So Congress is involved in determining how much some of these rates are.
Can you this isn't part of your spiel today, but the consent decree, did that start right when ASCAP did, do you think, or was that
started around the 1950s, 40s and 50s?
Oh.
And that was ASCAP and BM. I think at about the same time, ASCAP and BMI getting in trouble. I want to say maybe it was the 40s. Them getting in trouble for not paying certain. Everybody's heard pay to play and how radio used to be. You kind of had to pay to get on the radio. There was a lot of things going on to keep certain segments of the artists off of the radio. And so they fought back like they should have done. And all of these, when you think about some of the songs from rock and roll, a lot of those songs were taken straight out of, the Black culture. They were just, hey, Elvis is going to record this song and he has a huge hit with it. The guy that wrote it never had a huge hit with it. Well, one of the reasons was because they were keeping those songs off the radio. And so one of the reasons the consent decree came along was because there was a mess there where people were paying to play, getting kickbacks, all that kind of stuff. Record labels, ASCAP, radio stations, all of them were, they weren't playing, it wasn't exactly a level playing field. So Congress got involved to say, you can't, and then here comes Motown and, there you go. So, you have to correct things as they go because people will take advantage. Always. They always will, especially if there's money involved. Sucks.
Right.
That's true. So, yeah, the consent decree, from what I remember, it's been a while since I've read about it, but that's what I remember.
Okay.
They got in trouble for doing some unsavory things. So
I see. Okay.
Okay, so then comes 8-track tapes, then cassette tapes with cassette recorders, and the industry goes a little nuts because they're like, no, you can do like we all did when we were kids. Before I knew what I was doing was illegal. When I was a teenager, you people that are over 40, or maybe over 50, you'll remember you would sit by. I remember going to church and hitting record on the record thing when we lived in the Philippines and recording Casey Kasem's Top 40 and letting it record. I had a recorder that would flip the direction of the record. That was my birthday present when I was 14.
Wow.
So that I could get longer while we were going to church, because a lot of the times the song I wanted wasn't in the top 20.
You were already finding the technological things that did something that you needed.
I was like, no, 60-minute tape is not long enough. Then they have the 90-minute tapes. I'm like, still not long enough. I need, we're going,
Wow.
Yeah. So
I didn't know that.
Yeah, and it also had, I have to have 2 cassette decks. Huh?
I was just going to say, Beth and I are sisters, and I've never heard her tell this before.
Well, I'm just coming back to me as I'm thinking about it. I had that, which would reverse it and then record the other way. So it had 2 record heads, and then it had 2 decks. So then I could take the one tape and make my own little mixtape off of the songs on the radio that I wanted.
Yeah.
So that's, I lived in the Philippines. I would buy records in the Philippines, but I don't think anybody I don't think the songwriters ever got their money off of those anyways at that time. It's gotten a lot better, I'm sure. But anyway, so those.
By the way, hold on. I'm going to jump over and close the door, and we can either edit or we can just keep going.
I'm just going to keep talking. Okay, so when that came along, they knew people like me were going to go in and record off of the radio and record other cassettes and different things and make copies. So they tried to stop this new media coming along, and you can't stop technology, even though companies have tried many times to stop new technologies. So what they did was they compromised, and they gave a little tiny fee off of every blank cassette, then CD, then I don't know if it's on like a USB drive, but it's on, there's a fee attached when you buy a stereo in your car. Mine, I found out the other day, I can push pause when I'm listening to the radio, and I can rewind a little bit. Yeah, I know. Shocking, right? I know. It was a very exciting moment in my life when I figured that out.
Wait, does that make that completely streaming?
That's terrestrial radio I can do that on. And I can't do it on all terrestrial radio, but some of them I can. The talk radio that I listen to, I can do that. So
interesting.
So that's a fee attached that goes to the PROs. So that's just one of the, every time, my point is, every time there's a new technology, there's new money, there's new places to collect it, and you're probably not getting all of yours. Because I don't even think, I doubt that like Paul McCartney's getting every penny he's owed, and he's got money and big time. So he's got big time people working out for him. So, okay, so as
Beth, I want to just tell a little story here too. You mentioned the Philippines. I'm going to mention Malaysia, because I remember that was where I got into music, and I had vinyls, but cassettes came along, and they started, and these little places would pop up in Malaysia of all these, they were copying the vinyls and selling them very cheap. And that's the first time I remember what you just said, thinking, wait
a minute.
Is this, they shouldn't be doing that. And I knew it was wrong. And I knew the record store I went to, you know, I loved it. I had just gotten into Chicago, you know, in the mid 70s, and I bought all their records, and I would go in that record store, and it was just like a kid in a candy store. I just like to look at them. I didn't buy many. I didn't have a ton of money, but then I would see on the street, these people all had the cassette, and we had a cassette player in our van, and, you know, we'd buy some of those sometimes. And then I'd just think about it, like, this can't be right. This,
right.
Yeah, it's not okay.
I used to wonder in the Philippines why you could buy a cassette for, like, you know, $1.
Right.
And it was like, you know, $8 in the States, or $7 at the time.
Yeah.
Do you remember the place up in the Philippines when we go up into Baguio? There was a place on the old base that had that too, where you could go make a cassette. You could go pick songs off of all those, you know.
Like a jukebox kind of a thing, but you could record it.
Well, you would go through the stacks. You would go through the stacks, and you would hand them, and you would say, I want you know, track 6 on this Commodore's record. And I want, you know, I remember making those records. Like, I couldn't afford that stuff, you know, but yeah, we didn't realize it when we were kids, but you did still like
that was the military base. So they were doing that for the, yeah,
they were doing that. And I think there was a charge, you know, and I seem to remember somebody saying, like, oh yeah, we have the right to do this. Like, we're paying them, you know, whatever. But it seems, because it was a US base, so hopefully they were paying for that. I don't know. Okay, so the point of all of this is, as technology comes along, every time there's a new way to buy or listen to music, it splinters. The way you get paid, where you get paid, how much you get paid, splinters. And so we're back, you know, I started with Mozart and the Patreon. We're back to Patreon because artists aren't making enough money. Now, there is, like I said, I've read a lot of articles this past week. And one of the articles, one place said they estimate between 20 and 50% of royalties end up in a black box and never make it to who they're supposed to get to. Another one said they think up to 70. I think that's might be exaggerated, but I could see that might be possible, considering.
I know that this can be true because we have chased royalties so many times for some of our television guys that write for TV. And if you start looking into it, you start finding all kinds of errors. And excuse me, if anybody from
there's human
ASCAP BMI on,
it's going to happen. It just does.
Yeah.
You know, and it's not malicious. It's untenable the way that it's been going. We'll get to how things are changing and hopefully getting better as we go through this podcast and we talk about the MMA. But one of the articles I read was from a quote from a company called Cobalt. And they go, they don't take any of your publishing, which is pretty cool. They take, I think, 10 or 15% of it. And they go after all of the streams. Now, this is getting interesting because I just read on BMI yesterday, BMI says, hey, if you get paid for something somewhere else, then we're not going to pay you for that. Because Dawn and I were discussing how if you hire a company to go do your administration, and they go collect something, and then that gets reported and collected through BMI, it's kind of, you know, that's why we say it's the wild, wild west. You know, you might actually get paid twice for something. Oops. But you know, it's kind of crazy. I don't know how that all works right now. Cobalt will go, and they've got, you know, some big artists. I think you can join as well. Just go check out the terms and see what they can do for you if you've got a lot of music out there. One of their artists, they wouldn't say who, they had a huge song, and this one year Cobalt went and added up all the places that they could collect. And that means, like, one of their for instance there was a CD or something with the song at a workout place, and this CD was, you know, given to gyms in this one country, in Sweden I think it was, for, you know, the workout thing, and it was played 2,400 times. They collected $8. That's one place to collect. That's one stream royalty avenue. They had 900,000 on one song. Almost 1 million places to collect $8, $10, $100, 900,000. I had to read it
That's
and
a lot of money.
that's a lot of money. Yeah, that's one of the big boys. That's one of the big things, right? That's a hit song. That's somebody that's on the charts, probably a #1 hit, you know, probably re-recorded by a bunch of people, you know, so who knows if there's sync things in there as well. You know, there's probably a lot of different avenues. Obviously, there's a lot of different avenues, 900,000, but there's a lot of different types of licensing going on as well. So
Yeah.
with that said, it's a frustrating place. There's 900,000 places, and sometimes it can take years to collect your money from a little town in South America or some little country in, you know, in Europe. It has to go through a different PRO, and then it has to go through, it's kind of crazy because every country has their own collection agencies and stuff. So that's the history of like, holy crap, what kind of mess are we in? That's why we're in a mess. Technology keeps going and we are chasing it. We're not ahead of it. We've never been ahead of it. We're always going to be chasing it. And we might think that this is it. We got digital streaming. We got something's coming, people. Something's coming. I don't know what it is, but something's coming, and it's, who knows, you know, if you think about it, let me know, because I'd like to invest in your company. Okay, so let me just go through really quickly getting paid. Let me just go over some terms so that when we start talking about these, you know what they are. There's four different kinds of licensing royalty streams, really, basically. There's mechanical royalties, there's performance royalties, synchronization royalties, and print royalties. Is that it, Dawn? Is there one more? I think there's a couple more, but those are the main ones. So mechanical is going to have some breakouts in it. Performance is going to have a bunch of different kinds of breakouts in it, because there's tons of different performance royalties. So that's when it starts, you know, it just kind of starts to feather off and get into the, you know, different avenues. So to understand, so there's four streams there, and then they branch off. You need to understand a little bit about copywriting and publishing, and we will be doing more podcasts on copyright and publishing, probably quite a few of them. We'll be doing more podcasts on how to get paid, because we're going to need to get into some of these specifically, some of these companies and some of these avenues. But basically, there's 4 different people that can collect from those 4 different royalties. They don't all collect them, but we'll get into that in a minute. They are the songwriter, the publisher, the label, which has the master recording, and the artist. So those 4 get married to the 4 royalty streams, and it's kind of a mishmash. If you look online if you just go look for royalty graphics or publishing graphics, good luck, because it looks like spaghetti, a lot of them. And these are people trying to explain how it works. They're put time into it. So it can get very confusing. So
let's go over these 4 kinds again. You've got the artist, you've got the songwriter. Let's start with songwriter.
You got the songwriter.
So that's the song, the music and the lyrics. Then you've got the artist. So say the artist is somebody different than the songwriter. So there's
you could be all 4. You could be all 4 of these, depending on how you work. But you might be 1, 2, 3, or 4 of them.
Right, you might be. And many independent artists are all 4 of these, but I just want to go over those real quick because it's going really fast. So the songwriter has, you know,
copyright on they have the copyright on the lyrics and the notes, the melody. And now sometimes with the courts, we're getting into the groove, the bass line, we're getting into the weeds, but basically copyright is on the melody and the lyrics. Okay, Dawn.
Right.
Then there's the artist.
Then you have the artist. There's an artist that records it. What's a big one that they always bring up? It's Whitney Houston and Dolly Parton. Dolly Parton wrote the song.
Dolly Parton wrote the song. I Will Always Love You.
I Will Always Love You. And I always hear people bringing that one up because that's a good example. Dolly Parton wrote it, so that is her composition. Whitney Houston recorded it, and she is the artist. So on a song like that, the artist is going to get some good payment because it's a multi-million-dollar song and it's still going on. But that's just an example of a song that everybody would say, oh, that's Whitney Houston. But, you know, Dolly Parton's composition.
And Dolly Parton wrote it first. It was a country song.
She did.
She did.
And I would, who made more money?
Dolly's made a lot
Dolly
of money on
did.
songwriting. She's a good
So
prolific
songwriters,
songwriter. Yeah.
yeah, songwriters, if you are a songwriter, keep working at it,
And
please.
then
Okay.
and then Randy Thomas and Bob Carlisle made a buttload of money on one of her albums because they wrote a song for her that Dolly recorded. And Why'd You
Got
Come
it.
In Here Looking Like That? That's a great title.
Friends of ours that, yeah, we got to get them on here.
Yeah, we do.
Yeah, that would be fun. So I was songwriter, artist,
Publisher.
publisher.
So that lyric and melody is split into two. So that they call that two half. You know, there's two halves. There's the recording, and then there's the composition. And that composition, the lyrics and the music melody, are split into two. It's equally split. So the songwriter or songwriters and the publisher or publishers split it. So if the songwriter has a record deal or has a publishing deal, then that publisher will get that 50% of that song. If you don't have a label or a publisher, like a publishing deal, you are the publisher. If you write a song, you are by de facto the publisher. So good to know. You have two things there.
This is why if you're an independent artist, when you need to look into publishing and make sure that you are following all of the streams as a publisher. We'll get into that on another podcast as well. But
let me just tell you, the songwriter's got 1 or 2 streams. The publisher's got a ton of streams.
Yes, they do.
Way more streams than the songwriter.
They get paid for a lot more.
A lot more. And
right.
They are also the one that's in control more of if that can be synced and things like that. So
right.
You just need to understand the publishing has the power and the money. Really.
Right.
Publishing is
true.
And then there's the label.
Go ahead. Is the real estate. Publishing is the real estate in music. Yeah. Last one, Beth?
Last one is the label. I say the label. There's not that many labels left. I think there's like 3 record labels left, big ones. But whoever owns the master recording, there's a lot of little labels out there too. So you might have a deal with a record company and they pay for you to go in the studio and record your album. They're probably going to own the master recording. You might own part of it. Depends on what your deal is. Make sure you get an attorney to look at that, to know if you own part of that master recording, because the master recording has its own royalty streams. And when you do a sync or something like that, the publisher has a say, but the person who owns the master recording also has a say. So that master recording is valuable. Now, other people can make a master recording of your song after you've released it. So if you release an album and it's available for somebody to buy or download or stream, then somebody else can come along, pay you a little bit of your fee for songwriting and re-record it. They own the master that they record. They still don't own your composition. You're still the songwriter, you're still the publisher, or whoever that is, but they do own the master recording if they paid to have the little fee. So just be aware. There's 4 things, and they just start breaking off into where do I get my money? Anything else, Dawn?
No, I just wanted to go over those a little more in depth.
Okay, thank you. Okay. Oh, I got so many notes. To go over. Okay, one of the things we didn't talk about, let me just go through a few things here, mention other places. Spotify, digital streaming. When we talk about how many royalty streams there are and how they're broken down into these little streams, Spotify is a good example because Spotify has, I think, 4 standard ways to pay somebody for a stream, ways to pay the songwriter for the stream. So, they have, if there's somebody listens to Spotify and they have an account with Spotify and they pay Spotify a monthly fee, right? So they have an account there. That's one thing, but it's broken up into 2. Did you go and request that song, or did you just put on one of the radio stations and it happened to pop up? 2 different royalty streams. If you don't have an account with them and you were just listening to their free site, the same applies with 2 different royalty streams. If you request the song or if it just happened to play. That's in every country that Spotify is in. They're pretty much almost all of them. So that's just, Spotify alone has thousands of royalty streams available. So, and those, how much you get paid on Spotify, Pandora, all those things, it's always a moving target. It depends on how much money they make. There's not a set fee. If you want to re-record somebody's song and do a mechanical license for them and put it on a CD or put it on download, for download, you have to pay 9.1 cents for that, for each one that you're selling. There's no such thing for streaming. It's not a set rate with all of these. And these are the things that we'll talk about the Music Modernization Act in a minute, trying to kind of solidify all of this, but it's basically based on how much income and how much advertising that entity has. It's always been that way with radio, with TV. It's negotiated based on how much money they're making. So they'll pay a couple percent to all of the songwriters they're going to use over a year. So
they're basically sharing a percentage of their profits.
Yeah, and you're sharing it with all of the other artists as well, artists and
right.
songwriters. And
is every artist getting the same amount, whether they're independent or large artist?
On Spotify or on?
Yeah.
I from what
sometimes they're not.
Sometimes they're not, because they're trying to. They got millions and millions and millions of plays, and you would think, it's digital, you can keep track of that. But what they're doing is they're doing amalgamated, is that the right word? Where they're aggregated. They're taking all of the information that they're getting. How many plays did this song get, that song get? How much are we paying out for this quarter? How much did we get in income? Because they don't know how much they're going to get in income from advertising, from subscriptions, things like that. It varies. People cancel their subscriptions, new people come along. So when they get to the end of the quarter, they say, this is how many plays we had. This is how much money we have. We're going to split. We're going to take 30%. We're going to give 70 for royalties. And then they start figuring out who to pay those to. The way I understand it is it's the big boys that get the money. I think it's a percentage broken down. So there's a lot of places where if you're an independent artist, you're just not going to ever get paid. You might, those royalties are collected, but it's not collected in the way that you might think. So if your song is played on the radio, on terrestrial radio, they do not make a tick on a little, Excel sheet and say, we owe half a penny to BMI. They have already in advance negotiated with BMI before the year and said, we're going to make this much money. We're going to give you 1.5% of our ad revenue. And they do that with ASCAP, CSAC, BMI. Coffee shops, places like that play music, they have to pay for a license. They do kind of the same thing. There's all these places that BMI, CSAC, ASCAP collects money. So then they figure out what songs were played the most. And they don't necessarily pay every person. If you get played on the radio once, you're not going to get half a penny. You're just not. That's sad to say. Now, if you get on television, it's almost, and that's where Dawn and I, know a little bit more, because that's the world we've worked in more. You're going to get paid for that. There's a cue sheet. They're going to say, this song was played for 30 seconds on this show in prime time on the network. That's a very specific, depending on which PRO you're with, they all have different calculators for that, but they know how much that pays. They have an algorithm and it goes in there and bam, a thing pops out. It doesn't matter if if that's the only song you've ever recorded, you've never been on anything else. If that song plays, you get paid the same that anybody else would get paid. If it's a Paul McCartney song, he gets the same, okay? Now, upfront sync fee, he might have negotiated a massive amount upfront, but on the back end, you're going to get the same. On radio, it's not necessarily true. On all of these other platforms, it's not necessarily true, because there's a lot of places, and it's not the same across the board. Everything's different. There's a lot of places where they will, at the end of the year, say, hey, we had, TBS, which is played on cable, but it's not, it's not if they want to, I think there's like some off US places that it's shown. So we're going to give you money on the back end and we're going to give that to you. They're not collecting cue sheets again and looking down. They're just going to collect that big chunk of money. And when they get a big chunk of money like that, it doesn't go to every single person that got played. And that's in television. In radio, it's even worse. It does not go to the top people. If you go see, I can't even think of a band. if you go see Toto, which you can't go see Toto anymore, well, it's a whole other story right there. If you go see Toto at the Greek, you pay for your ticket, and the venue, I don't know, is it the venue or the artist that pays the fee, Dawn? To the PRO? For the set list.
It's the venue.
The venue. So the venue pays for how many songs were performed. They give a set list. They, actually give a set list to the PROs, and the PROs collect that fee. Now, at the end of the year, all of the, and little venues too, not just big venues, little tiny venues. So if you go to a club where there's 50 people, that club has to pay. They have to pay this fee, which comes pretty much out of the pockets of the artist. So the artist, even if they were playing their own music, they will write their set list down, and that gets sent to the PROs. At the end of the year, the PROs add up all of that money. They look at all of the set lists. They see what the most played songs are. So if you do a cover of a song, that's going to be added in there. If you do your own, that's added in there. But if you're not a big artist, it pretty much doesn't get up to the level it needs to be, because they only pay the top 300 artists. That's, I believe BMI does that. So there's a lot of these places where you're gonna, you don't even know you're paying this fee. And so you don't even feel it. The venue feels it. And Madonna feels it when she cashes her check, or somebody that's more popular now than Madonna. I'm that old, okay? Always my thing. I don't want Madonna to have my money. She got enough money. Okay, so anyways, that's kind of in the weeds, but just know, every type of license and every type of vehicle for music being played and used, how it gets paid, where it gets paid, who it goes to, ends up in the hands of, is different. It's all different, and it's all a moving target, and it's all changing. And one of the reasons is because as these technologies are added, they have to quickly figure out, because Spotify comes along and they don't ask permission, really. They don't make big deals with these companies at the beginning. They just kind of do a Napster and start doing things, and then they get in trouble. And then they TikTok is an example. TikTok, Facebook, Instagram, all of these are not paying what they should be paying. And it's difficult. I will give them a little bit of credit. It is difficult, almost impossible, for them to keep track of all of those songs and who that money belongs to. So every time that happens, there's a negotiation to figure out how are we going to pay, and who are we going to pay, and who's going to end up getting the royalties. So that doesn't mean there's not money out there for you if you're a smaller artist. There is. So you have anything to say, Dawn, while I look at my notes?
Money out. Yes, money. I do want to encourage the smaller artists. We do have places that you can sign up that will pay you for certain things. As Beth mentioned, the one I know that pays the best is Sync on network television. So that is what we've been chasing over the years, but there are others. There are other ways to get paid. Producers and engineers, we've talked about this. If you're producing for somebody that ends up having a bigger record, there's ways for you to find other money. So even if it's 5% of it, for the life of the song, if it ends up going somewhere, Beth can tell you some of the things her husband worked on. Sometimes they never knew if that song was going to go anywhere.
My husband recorded a song in Nashville in Christmas of 1995, I think it was, yeah. In a converted carport. He mixed it in a converted garage, and it went double platinum. He called me on the phone and was like, "This is the best song." It was what's Butterfly Kisses, Bob Carlyle.
Yeah, I thought
it was huge. It went huge. It didn't go huge when it was first released, interestingly enough. That's a whole other story. The record company.
So if the laws had been in place then that are in place now.
Well, now if you're a producer, or let's just say what it is, if you're a producer, if you're an engineer, you need a letter of direction. This was not a thing when my husband was doing this in the 90s. He knew. Now producers would get points. So if you're producing a band, especially if they're signed to a label, you're going to negotiate in your fee as a producer how many points you're going to get. So points are based on the sale price of, when we say like you get 9.1 cents per copy of a CD, that's for one song on the CD. Mm-hmm. So if there's 4 songwriters, they split that 9.1 cents. Those are points. Those are percentages of of the sale of the record or the CD or the digital download. So if you're a producer, you have to negotiate those points, but you also now want to get a letter of direction, because one place that, again, there's new things coming up in technology, but there are also new laws coming up and new places where you can go collect royalties from songs 20, 30, 40 years ago. And one of them is the AFM SAG-AFTRA. I'm not going to say all the letters. It's too many letters. It's AFM SAG-AFTRA Fund. Just go Google that. And they pay for non-featured artists, or non-featured, what do they call them, artists? Non-featured artists?
I'm not sure exactly.
Okay, so they will pay the session players, and they will pay if there's a letter of direction, they will pay the producer and the engineer. They will definitely pay the players, and it's 5% of the artist royalty, which doesn't sound like much, but you're talking about a lot of session players back in the 80s and 90s who would play on a couple hundred albums a year, some of these guys, or a couple hundred songs a year. And so those guys can be collecting, a little bit here, a little bit there. If there's 8 guys that played on a, Steely Dan album, each of those guys can collect a little bit here, a little bit there. It all adds up. Pennies add up. So check out the SAG-AFTRA, the AFM SAG-AFTRA Fund, and go register. They do have a list on there where you can go see if your name's on there. And if your name's on there.
Sound Exchange as well. Sound, or is it the Harry Fox Agency? Sorry.
That does
those. Yes.
Okay. So there's 3 places that you might not have heard of. You need to go register. Sound Exchange, because they're going to collect some of these little fees as well.
They're collecting on digital royalties.
Right. That's part of the other problem is some of these are on broadcast. Some of these are on digital downloads. Digital streams is different. That's collected at a different place. And if you ask me right now which place is which, I don't know. I can't remember. There's too many of them. Okay, that's why when she goes, which one? I'm like, I don't know.
I know. I'm looking at my notes right here. Harry Fox mechanical licensing and
For which though? Mechanical licensing for what? Right? Yeah, it's all very confusing. And now mind you, we have tried, we do this for a living. We've done this for 30 plus years each. And we just spent a week trying to figure out all of this, and we're still a little bit confused. It's not because we're stupid. It's because it's very confusing. So
things are changing all the time.
Things are changing all the time, and more companies, like I said, are coming up, and more of these funds. The government, and everything we're talking about, by the way, is pretty much U.S. based. Okay, Spotify's everywhere. All your royalties are going to be everywhere. But in your country, if you're not in the United States, it's going to be a little bit different. You're going to have to kind of go figure this out. There's probably in your country not as many of these places to go because the government in the United States likes to make lots of little places to do things and fix things. And then there's just more places to go. So SAG-AFTRA was started, by the union with the help of the government, I believe. Sound Exchange, same thing, right, Dawn?
I believe so. Yes.
Harry Fox is now messed up with the MLC, which is the Music, help me, Licensing Cooperative.
Licensing Collective. Music Licensing Collective.
So,
which tells you they're going to be helping everyone collect.
Right. So as you go along, you do, okay, I'm going to say it again. AFMSAGAFTRAFund.org. Go on there and register there. Just do it. Just do it. Don't question me. Just do it. Okay. I'm like your mother telling you, just go register there. If you have music out there, if you've sold songs, whatever, just go register your stuff. Soundexchange.com. Does Sound Exchange cost? Yeah.
I have a question. You mentioned the other day to me that I was in a band in the 80s, and I'm going to say the name because she keeps saying I don't say it. Krumbacher. We were a Christian techno band. We had 4 albums. We had #1 singles. We toured for many years. But Beth, you said the other day that they will not pay me anything, even though I sang.
The AFM SAG-AFTRA? No.
Yes.
No. Okay. I will, full disclosure, Dawn interviewed there and they offered her a job, and she ended up taking a job somewhere else. I interviewed there. They didn't like me, apparently, because they didn't offer me a job. But while I was interviewing there, I was asking them some questions because I was very curious. So you're going back, and what they did back in the early 2000s, they started going through all of the records that were big records. So they would, I don't remember how deep they went. I don't remember if it was the top 100, top 200 albums, if they were going off of charts and things like that. So they were, basically they would go find a song or an album that was, you know, had a lot of plays, had a lot of income for it. And they would go back and try to figure out who played on these records. Now, if you know anything about the record industry back in the 60s, 70s, and 80s, by the time the 80s comes along, you can see session players listed. Back in the 70s, back in the 60s, you had, what's the name of the group, Don? The Wrecking Crew. If you haven't watched that documentary, please go watch it. The Wrecking Crew was going from studio to studio every day, recording everything.
Musician.
Yeah. So, you know, you have the Monkees record, they're recording on that one day. They're going and recording on the Beach Boys another day. You know, that's not the Beach Boys playing all that music. That's session players.
Although,
and they were,
I must say, Beth is right. Go watch this thing. Glenn Campbell was in the Wrecking Crew. There's many large artists that came out of there, but they were literally being paid, like Beth said, to just go record for all these albums.
And it was a big, and they basically were wrecking the industry. That's why they call it. You guys just wrecked the whole thing. You just come in and, you know, nobody was playing on their records at that point because the record companies' studio time was expensive. And the record companies realized we could go in and get these guys to record the whole thing. It'll sound better than some of these guys that are writing songs we want to record, but maybe they're not the best players in the world, you know? And as I always say, the Beatles weren't the best players in the world. They were the best songwriters in the world, you know? Thank God that the Wrecking Crew didn't, you know, wasn't around when the Beatles were recording, because who knows what those would sound like. They did amazing stuff, you know? But they did the Carpenters, they did, you know, but they weren't getting credited on all of this stuff. So the record companies wanted it both ways. They wanted to pay these guys, hurry in the studio, make it sound great, get out, and we're going to make it look like the band's this good. Okay. And, you know, the bands, a lot of them weren't that good, but you had some of the best players in the world in the Wrecking Crew. So that went through, I think, up until the late 70s, maybe, when the Toto guys started coming along, you know, and Steely Dan wanted you to see who was on their records, you know, look at these, you know, here's Bernard Purdie on this one, or Carl on that one. So the SAG-AFTRA fund started going through and having to try to figure out, and this was why it was such a cool job at the beginning. I'm sure, Dawn, I wish I would have told you to take that job. They were going and contacting all these players and all these people and all these, you know, people that were around, trying to figure out who played on what song, so that they could then list them, collect these fees, and give them a little bit of change, a little bit of money. So some of them, a lot of them they found, and they've gone, I think they're up into the 2000s now. Might be farther than that, but they are not paying everything ever recorded or everything ever on the radio, which was my conversation with the woman who interviewed me. Because I found my brother, I thought, on there. I found Jimmy Wisner, and I was like, my brother, you owe my brother money. And she goes, let me look. And she looked it up. She goes, 1946 or something like that. I'm like, well, that's not my brother. It was some dude.
So our brother was also in Krumbacher, our band. So he was the drummer. And so we both sang on things. We played on our records. You know, we were all over those records, but for us, we're probably not going to see money.
No, and I was under the impression when I went in to interview that they were going to pay absolutely everybody that ever, and I understand it's a hard task when it's just the top 100. So, but there might be money there for you. There's no reason not to go look. I have found a lot of my friends on there and emailed them and said, go register. You got money. I did this with one of my friends for about 3 years. About every 6 months, I would email him. And then one day I see on one of his social media, he goes, hey, if you haven't registered with the AFM SAG-AFTRA, go do it. And I'm like, you doofus. Don't listen to me. Yeah, anyways, you know who you are. Okay, so go check it out. There's a list of people they're looking for. So if they haven't sent you money, you might still be getting some if you've, done some session work on some stuff. And they will list your name, and then it says contact us, and you can, they just might not have your address. They don't want to send it to the wrong person, like my brother. So there you go. Okay, soundexchange.com. You want to go register there as well. You also want to register at Harry Fox Agency, and that is harryfox.com. Harry Fox is working with a new entity called the Music Licensing Collective, right? Did I get that right?
Mechanical licensing
Mechanical? Is it mechanical? I don't know. It's MLC, but it's not MLC.com. It's the MLC.com. So they are still getting up to speed. I wouldn't suggest you go there quite yet. You could go look at it and figure out what they're doing and try to keep going back about once a month. I haven't been able to get through their system yet. I think they're still creating it so that you can go register. And if you're a bigger artist and you have, somebody that's doing your publishing, they can go in as a publisher and do it from that side as well. Okay. They are working with the MLC and Harry Fox.
Harry Fox is, yeah.
Harry Fox is working with their huge catalog. They have about, I think, 80% of licensable material is at Harry Fox in one way or another. So if you need a mechanical license, you can go there. So they have a huge database, and that's the MLC is starting with that database, because the MLC is basically going to try to figure out how to get all of this digital in one place so everybody knows who should get paid for what. This is why we're all hopeful the MLC is going to do their job, and I'm trying to stay hopeful. Okay, it came out of what's called the Modern Music Modernization Act of 2018, and that was publishers, songwriters, Spotify, everybody kind of going and saying, we need some help here. We need something to make this easy and a one-stop place where, there's no reason in this world that's digital that there shouldn't be a place where you can go look up who the songwriter was, who the publisher is, and
every song, publisher. Yeah,
right.
It should all be in place.
Right. So that's what they're trying to do. And Harry Fox has a lot of that information already. So it's going to take them a while to get up to speed. We're hopeful that all of these little places you have to chase your music royalties is going to start to get a little bit easier. I don't know how long that's going to take or how it's going to look. They don't know, probably, but they're working on it. And they've got songwriters and publishers working together so that it doesn't get weighted one way or another. So
yeah. Can I say one more thing about Harry Fox Agency? I just realized recently that Lyric Find is a company that when you sign up for Harry Fox, you can opt in. It might cost you a little bit. I'm not sure on the upfront, and then they're going to possibly take a percentage. What Lyric Find is doing, and they've been around for quite a few years, but they are tracking lyric clicks all over the world.
There are 5 million lyric searches for lyrics on Google every day.
So Lyric Find is actually
also you get paid. That's if somebody displays your lyric on their website and they have ads on that website, that can be a copyright infringement, right? It basically is. So what they say is, hey, pay me. So right. It's one of those things that people were doing it, nobody was getting paid. Somebody made some noise, God bless him. Yeah. And now things are starting to get paid. Sorry, Dawn, go ahead.
So anytime somebody Googles your music or whatever, it's just going to be, and this is one thing they said in the webinar I was listening to on Lyric Find, is that they're actually paying better than a Spotify stream per click. So I was like, whoa, we got to get people doing this. So we'll do more on this at another time. We'll go into it a bit more deeply about what you need to register there, how you need to do this, and all of those things. But I wanted to mention that just so you know that even your lyrics can pay you something.
So yeah, even if you're not sure if you have anything income from somewhere at Harry Fox or whatever, go register. Put your songs up, because you don't know what's going to happen in, say you do get a sync or somebody records one of your songs. If you don't have your ducks in a row, because sometimes that can happen pretty fast.
Yep.
And then you don't have time to go register everywhere, to put up your own lyric videos or whatever. You want to get all of this stuff ready to go. You want to be registered everywhere and have your music ready and have all of your kind of your marketing type things, ready to go as well. So that if that happens for you, you're ready to go.
Yep, exactly.
Okay, so the other place we haven't really mentioned is PROs. If you don't know what a PRO is, it's a performing rights organization. We kind of just glossed over, we didn't even talk about them yet when we're talking about collecting stuff. But PROs, there's 4 of them. There's BMI.com, ASCAP.com, CSAC.com, and Don GMR. I always get the letters mixed up. GMR. Don't go, you can go look at GMR, but you have to be invited to join them. And I think CSAC still,
it's still an invite. Yeah. It's not hard to get in, but
if you know people that are CSAC songwriters, I think you can get somebody to kind of vouch for you. Right. You want to go register at these, one of these PROs. You can be a songwriter at only one of them. If you are a music publisher working with a lot of different songwriters, you're going to probably be registered at all of them as a publisher. It's free to register as a songwriter. Some of them charge a little bit to register as a publisher. BMI, they are starting to allow you, if you haven't registered as a publisher, I think they're attaching the publishing to you as a songwriter, assuming that that's what it is under your name if you haven't registered as a publisher. So that's kind of something that's changed a little bit. So go register at a PRO, Performing Rights Organization. They collect money. Dawn, tell us how they collect money and where it's from.
The money from the PROs is from Sync or
some streaming.
Some streaming. Hulu and Network are there now. Hulu and Netflix are there now. But there's many ways that the PROs collect. They even collect, as Beth was saying a while ago, they collect on live events. There's all kinds of streams and performance is basically what it's on when your music.
I have a little list here. I found it.
Sorry. Oh, you do?
I totally put you on the spot.
No, it's okay.
Like froze a little bit. Okay. They will collect from TV, radio, compulsory license fees, satellite radio, live concerts, commercial music services, which is like in a store or restaurant, you get in an elevator, you hear a song, you're walking through, Target, you hear a song. Some of those are companies that put together CDs and things. Those are licensed through there. Airlines, theme parks, sports venues, little places like that. And they are starting to do some collecting on streaming, which means that there's just one more place you can sign up to get streams, which is why I think BMI put on their website, if you're collecting money over there from this, don't let us pay you, please tell us, because there's companies coming up who are starting to collect. And let's name some of those. Okay.
Songtrust.
Songtrust.com.
Yes, and they will, by the way, I've signed up there and worked with them quite a bit. So they actually talk to BMI and let them know, here's an artist, we're registering for them, we're going to collect for them. So, some of these companies, BMI, they're working hand in hand.
My only fear with that is that something gets dropped in the middle. You know what I mean?
Yes.
This is what concerns me. This is why.
I know what you mean. I've seen it. I see it every week.
Yeah. Dawn sees it every week. Why didn't we get paid for that? Oh, because we thought so-and-so was collecting and they didn't. Right. Yeah. Right. It could be a problem. So I don't know. If you know you got played on something, if you know you're on the charts in Spain, go make sure you're getting paid in Spain. Yes. And it can take a couple of years, but.
Now, let me say something about the PROs. They have reps, and if you sign up with them, sometimes you'll have a rep right away that's working with you. I've met at BMI for sure. I've met a couple of amazing reps just in recent months. One I've known for the over a decade, that will go to bat for you. And it doesn't matter who you are. It doesn't matter if you're Paul McCartney or if you're Dawn releasing a song. they they are concerned. And it used to not be that way as much, but I think they're realizing there is
Well,
competition now.
they have to compete. They are ASCAP and BMI are considered nonprofits, but they do have to pay everybody. They have to pay their songwriters, their publishers, and they have to pay their staff to go do all of this work. So they are competing with all these companies. All these companies are coming in because there was a vacuum. Because again, things changed so fast that things weren't being collected and everybody was just chasing the ball. So a lot of these companies came in and they, are able as a new company maybe to get some funding from Silicon Valley or investors or something, write a better program and start from scratch. Sometimes that might be easier. Yeah. So, hopefully all of this gets centralized and the MLC can kind of figure out how to aggregate this so that, maybe they have a way that BMI and Song Trust can work together and see what's going on digitally. So they make sure that somebody does get paid. Okay, the next one is, how do you say that, Dawn? Audium?
Oh, yeah. I don't know about some of these, but.
Oh, you don't, okay. I'm just going to tell that I don't know if that one, we don't really know much about that one.
Music Report, yeah. AUDIAM. There's a few that I listed. Music Reports is more, it's kind of there for publishers, but I think you can sign up there if you're even a small, you have your small indie artist, you have a few songs. You need to check that one out. Maybe Cobalt, AWOL. Beth mentioned this before. I think they're doing some amazing things there. So
is it, you have it written down here, Dawn, in your notes, is AWOL and then AWAL. Is it AWAL?
Oops.
AWAL.com. We think.
Yeah. Okay.
But if you Google search Cobalt, AWOL, you can find them, and they're, and then there's also, there's music distributors as well. Now these are companies that will help you get your music. If you want to do a CD, you can still do that. If you want to put it up on Apple Music, if you want to put it up on all these other platforms, they will go out and do this for you, so you don't have to hit every single one. Man, this is much better than it was 15 years ago. Remember when we couldn't get on Apple Music, when I couldn't get on iTunes? You had to know somebody.
Yes, it's very true. These will all do that for you. Many of them do way more than that if you want them to. The fees aren't that much. It's really, I feel it's worth it. Some of them are $20 a year or something. I don't know.
They will work to collect for you because that's collecting for themselves too.
Yes, so. Even cover songs, they'll help you. Some of these have on their websites that they will help you get the licensing for the covers too. So, I know. So check some of those out. CD Baby, DistroKid, TuneCore, Cobalt again is doing that kind of thing.
DistroKid is DISTROKID.com.
Yes. I haven't checked this one out personally, but that's the one I hear the most lately, as far as it's a newer one, and I think they're doing a lot for people. So
DistroKid?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
So we've gone through a lot, Beth.
But we still haven't hit one thing.
Tell me.
I have all these crazy notes, and there's like minutia in here, and someday I'm going to figure out how to post it so everybody can look at them. But one more thing is neighboring rights. Dawn, you know a little bit more about this. So I'm going to go into the boring, nerdy part. They're back in when was the Berne Convention? 60s, 50s, 70s, somewhere in there. The entire world came together and said, we're going to sign this big thing, and we're all going to, make sure that we all, keep each other's copyright safe, and we're going to, whatever your copyright laws are, we're going to abide by them. But there's some weird stuff in there. So European copyright is definitely different than US copyright. It's not as long because Disney is in the US. So, it's 70 years after the last writer's death at this point. So Europe was like, no, we don't want the copyright to be that long. But Europe also has something they push, which is called moral rights, which is the right of the artist to be always linked to that work, so that you can't take their name off of it. You can't change it without, getting their permission. So there's, it's a little bit different. The United States did not sign the Berne Convention for years and years. And we did sign it recently, I think in the last 15 years, 20 years. but I don't know that we've signed it fully. We've kind of signed onto it, but still, because of that, when everybody else in the world signed that thing, they were saying, we're going to pay you for, you know, if we play your song in Spain and you're from the UK, we're going to pay you your royalties. Well, the US didn't want to sign that because the US sucks in some ways. And they weren't going to pay the Beatles, you know, the artist royalty on the radio. They were paying the publisher. And I think very recently, in the last 10 years, they started paying the writer. They weren't even paying them up till then. But the artist doesn't get paid when it goes on the radio in the US. Think about that. The artist,
or anybody playing or singing or doing anything on a record.
the artist does not get paid when they have a #1 song playing every half an hour on terrestrial radio
In the United States.
in the United States. And the reason that is because the United States refused to pay foreign neighboring rights and sign on to the Berne Convention. So they couldn't pay anybody because they couldn't pay their own. So they didn't pay anybody. So that's still around. So you can go now, it's starting to crack, and neighboring rights are collecting some of your royalties in countries where you don't have a PRO representing you. There are PROs in all of these countries, but you have to figure out how to go get those neighboring rights. Anything to say on that, Dawn?
Yes. I have notes somewhere, but I don't have them with me, so I'm not going to tell you countries. There are specific countries that you can sign up in and get paid if you do have music over there. I'll say, here's one way. If your music is on a TV show and you are singing, you did that recording and you are the artist, and it plays in a country that will pay neighboring rights to a US if you sign up to a US person. All you have to have is your ISRC code, and you go sign up at that in that country at their company, and every time that gets replayed, you get a payment. That I know is happening. So I can't give you the specifics right now, but we will in the future.
And I guess these companies we've been talking about, they're going to start to do that for you.
Yes.
Because
yes.
you don't want to go. There's 165 countries that the United Nations,
right.
175 that the United
right
Nations.
Now, also, there are specific neighboring rights companies that just do this outside of the US. There's international companies. There's one in Canada. They're all over the place, and they will do this just for people.
Okay. Can we put that somewhere, Dawn? If you are listening to us on a podcast, we also have this on our YouTube channel. So we'll put some of these in the notes. So if you're looking for that information, go look on our YouTube channel. We'll get you to watch this thing twice, right? There you go.
Right.
So, and like and subscribe while you're there.
Or since we're kind of at the end, let me say, we are amatterofmusic.com, and we told you at the beginning, I'm going to say it again, we're doing classes, and one of them pretty soon will be on all of this. We'll be helping you make sure you're getting registered, doing everything, you know, following all the streams where you can do this, and we'll walk you through that. We'll help you understand how that's going to work for you. Copyright, publishing.
We'll have it all typed out in the class and sent to you with all of the specifics that I can't get to you over audio.
And just like in our music sync class, where our goal is that you will get a music sync if you come to our class. I want to go over your songs with you. I want to tell you, you know, this one could work, but it needs to be produced this way. Let's even down to, can we get a female singer for this one? It might work better. Those kinds of things. But we want you to succeed as we try to help you understand the business. We also want you to succeed. So the same will be for this type of class coming up. So just follow us on A Matter of Music.
I'm sorry. I just wanted to say we've got copyright, we've got publishing, we've got where to get paid. We're not exactly sure what that class is going to look like, but if you're interested, please go to our website and email us and let us know on the communication form what you're interested in learning about and going more in depth, because we are looking at this and there's so much information, and we really want to get people the information that they're really looking for that would really help them in their furthering their careers. So if you can contact us there through our website. We're not going to send you a bunch of emails. We never sell anything. We're way too small for any of that. So just contact us on our website and let us know what you're interested in learning more of.
Yes.
That would be helpful.
Please do that. And please subscribe wherever you're listening or watching. And if you're listening at a podcast area, please download if you can, just because it works in our favor that people are listening. So
let's just get little listeners.
Yes, we appreciate you guys so much. It's been a lot of fun. Are we done, Beth?
I'm tired.
I know. Beth has been talking a while, so we appreciate her knowledge today, and we appreciate you tuning in, and we hope that you'll tune in next time at A Matter of Music.